I'd say like maybe 4 to 5 years ago, I started realizing a lot of shit. And one of the main things, what I started realizing was that a lot of people, maybe most, it's only a scale because I don't associate myself with most people, but in scale or in ratio to the people I've met, to the news I see, to the numbers I read about, to the people who talk about other people, there's a huge scale of our population that are walking around as zombified programs. Nothing mystical, nothing robotic, nothing alien-like, you know, but walking around docile and on two different paths, two distinct paths. One is you do and follow everything someone says. That's the one path. That's the one program. You do everything 100%, or you at least attempt to do everything 100%. The other distinct path, which is still a program, and I'll tell you why, although it opposes the first path, or attempts to oppose it, the other distinct path is you do the complete opposite of everything you're taught. The complete opposite. Right? Your parents says don't have a child, don't have a baby out of wedlock. You have a child, you have a baby out of wedlock. Right? I'm not saying what you do is necessarily right or wrong. It's just what you've been taught. Right? There's an extreme sense of not obeying anything. Whether it's by, you know, whether it's like your decision totally or other external factors, peer pressures that tells you not to listen to anything. And it's not just your parents, anything. So, right? There's both. And so a lot of people will say you're not programmed or you're necessarily woke or you're this or that when you're on path 2. But I'm gonna add a different caveat. A lot of people aren't in the middle. Most people aren't in the middle. And like, why would you say that? You know, people may have never heard of that, but like, why would you say that? Well, because as in Rome, you do what the Romans do, to a T, right? The radical people are pro-black, right? The union people want to just disregard everything and end up in prison, end up, not taking care of their kids, end up broke because they rather just be homeless and not work or not make income, right? There's that radical path 2 side that you just, your disruption is not doing anything, right? But it doesn't work that way because everybody in your circle can't be disruptive as you. You live in an environment where your disruption, your total disruption affects your livelihood 1,000% and affects the livelihood of other people that are dependents of you 1,000%. So there's that beaten path of, well, I'm woke and I'm doing this because I'm not listening to nothing. I'm not doing nothing. And it don't work that way. That's why you gotta be careful what people be saying, and how people label themselves, how people even distance themselves to a certain degree. I hope that makes sense. There are people who are programmed to do everything someone is taught without reading between the lines, and they're just moving severely on the physical and the most optimistic side of life, everything. And that's in very detail. Everybody knows about that path. But again, that second path, people think you just don't do anything, right? Or you start doing things that are against the physical law in your city, state, jurisdiction, country, just because you're so disruptive. That's a program too. Why is it a program? Because in the sense of trying to disrupt path one, the path one type of program, right? You become a statistic. You know, you become a negative statistic. You become a consequence. You become what people don't want to do. You know? And it's like, you know, well, does that mean everybody's programmed? No, not necessarily. In my experience and in my opinion, most people are. So it's like, because a lot of people are in that middle area, you know? Because it's hard to be in that middle area. There's not really a path for people in the middle. There's not really a path for people in that gray area. There's not a lot of people in that path trying to exemplify a standout. There's not people in that path trying to exemplify, okay, if I look at this person, there is something different about this person. He's not doing all the wrong things, and he's not just following all things that people tell him is right or tell her it's right. Like there's a little difference, you know. That's when you really kind of understand who's a part of it and who's not. Who's a system upholder and who's not, you know? Because the system is a balance. There's yin and yang. You gotta have everybody follow this beaten path. Yes, men. You gotta have and then you gotta have a certain group, right? The opposing group, however weight you wanna give it, right? Be against it. The system is a stronghold, it's a struggle. The system shows the consequence. Part of the system, part of the programming shows the consequence of when you go against the programming. So the people in that middle, in that gray area, who's trying to find those loopholes, right? Who's working harder than both path one and path two, right? They're trying to be in the middle. To know they still gotta sustain life in this physical world, but no, they can't veer both too far on path one and too far on path two. Because there's consequences for both. There's detrimental consequences for both, you know? So let me know in the comments. Let me know, you know, if you understand what I'm saying, for one. And let me know, too, what path you on, you know? Are you exemplifying someone who should be in the gray area? Do you know people who's kind of in that gray area that I'm talking about? Is this your first time even hearing about something like this? There's a group of people, a demographic, who are yes men, docile in that sense of just following everything that they've been taught, following things that they see, right? Trying to exemplify things that are very vain and of surface level, you know, energy. And then there's that radical sense, you know, where people, they kind of lose sense of self, right? They kind of lose sense of what living should be like, because they're 1,000% caught up on not being like those other people in path one, you know? So like, my whole thing is, how can we stay gray, right? How can we stay maneuvering? How can we stay aware of both paths? How can we stay aware about self-awareness, right? And understand our trajectory and where we should go in our life within this system. There's programs in this system on both sides. And that's what make people who are not, or who are trying to operate in a different stratosphere, that's what makes it hard for, you know, us, essentially, you know. So let me know in the comments, guys. Is this your first time seeing black? Please hit a sub, please drop a like, leave a comment.